Um, I think you saw this afternoon, Mr. Starr made the case for just how high the standard is if you're going to go down this road and remove a president from office less than 10 months before the next election. And again, I think Mr. Papura was great in laying out the facts that we've said so many times will not change, have not changed, will never change, regardless of what the New York Times may report about some anonymous source telling them what the draft manuscript of Mr. Bolton's book supposedly says. The last thing I'll say is, and then we'll let a few others speak, but the last thing I'll say is, if they go down this witness road, and I don't think they should, but if they do, you've got to go all the way to the end. You got to go all the way to the end, in my judgment, and that would mean the whistleblower, the individual who started this whole thing, the anonymous whistleblower with no firsthand knowledge, bias against the president, who worked with Joe Biden. Seems to me if you're going to go down this road, you got to go all the way and make sure that individual comes in, raises his right hand under oath, swears to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help him God, and face questioning about how this whole thing happened. Again, I hope that's not where we're going. I don't think that's the case. But if we do, that seems to me that it shouldn't be that Adam Schiff is the only person in the country, out of 330 million people, the only person in the country who knows the identity of the person who started the whole darn thing. So again, if we're going to go there, I think you got to go all the way, and the whistleblower should be part of any witness team. I'll yield to the gentleman from New York.
It's also really important to point out, Adam Schiff never issued a subpoena for John Bolton. Now, Judge Leon was hearing a case on a subpoena for Charles Kupperman and chose to have an expedited schedule to consider the Kupperman subpoena. There was an executive branch and legislative branch conflict on subpoenas during the impeachment inquiry. And Judge Leon decided to have an expedited schedule to consider that. And how did Adam Schiff respond to that expedited schedule? He lost interest. He withdrew the subpoena, and he issued a motion to dismiss. Now that means that in a December-January timeframe, that conflict would have potentially been resolved. But the timeline that was most important for the Democrats and Adam Schiff was to impeach the president by Christmas. And here was the other problem. Judge Leon may not have ruled in favor of the Democrats. Now, how do you impeach the President of the United States for obstruction of Congress right after Judge Leon rules in favor of the president in the Kupperman subpoena case? But remember this as we listen to the news over the course of today. Adam Schiff was in charge of this process for months as the prosecutor, the judge, the jury, the witness coach, and so much more. And he at no point issued a subpoena to hear from John Bolton.
The other thing you have to remember through all of this is that the importance of what Ken Starr presented this morning cannot be overstated. He explained that this age of impeachment that we've now entered is not what the framers of the Constitution intended. In fact, it's exactly what they feared. It is a threat to our constitutional order. And when we weaponize impeachment, as he explained, we've opened a Pandora's box for the country. It's something we're all deeply concerned about. We'll take a few questions.
Sir, I have a question. Are any of you just a little curious, at least, about what Bolton himself has to say?
Look,
Could you just, it's a narrow question I'm asking. Could somebody address
I'll give you a narrow answer to your narrow question. This is another page out of the playbook of the Democrats. It looks just like the Kavanaugh hearing and so many things that we've seen before.
Try, any of you. That's why I'm trying to keep this question narrow. Would any of you even have any curiosity about asking Bolton yourselves? When you gave me an answer like that, I think it was kind of...
Listen, there's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of presumption, there's a lot of assumption. We've seen that all through the process. That will not change. Trying to answer your question. That will not change the underlying facts. The important facts that are at issue that you just saw reiterated and that you'll see again today are the operative facts of this case. That's what the Senate has to look at. And we're not concerned about that at all.
Congressman, do you don't think that Ken Starr is the right messenger for this when he talks about the age of impeachment being here? You're hinging a lot of your arguments on what he had to say today. Is he the right person to make that case?
I think Professor Starr is an excellent person to present that. I think he did a fantastic job, and he is echoing and explaining what the framers of the Constitution intended. There's a reason that the impeachment clause has been so rarely used up till now in our history, because it was intended to be a rare, almost kind of nuclear option. They listed treason, bribery, and high crimes and misdemeanors. You don't have any of that here. They haven't even alleged a crime. Wait, and that's the reason, that is the reason that we're all so concerned. If abuse of power, the amorphous term abuse of power that the founders used to call maladministration, if that is now the standard, the bar for impeachment is so low that we should be concerned about every future president. Anytime a president has a majority party that's opposing him in the House of Representatives, the base is going to cry out for an impeachment, because the Democrats have set the bar now so low that anything we disagree with on policy, a phone call, or anything else now becomes the standard. These are troubled waters for the country, and that's what Ken Starr is explaining. I think you'll hear more of that from Professor Dershowitz, and it's a very, very important point that we cannot lose sight of.
On process, that we know there are a lot of grievances, there have been from the beginning, but what is the precedent, not just in the Senate, history of impeachments, but really in all of history of American jurisprudence for having a trial without witnesses?
Look,
This will be the first one.
Right. In
So
the previous two impeachments, you only have two precedents for this. You have Andrew Johnson and you have Bill Clinton.
Not just presidential, like all impeachments.
Well, but a presidential wait a minute, a presidential impeachment is a different standard. It's a unique animal, and we only have two examples to look at it. And both, in fact, including with Nixon, who never got to this stage, in the three examples of impeachment, you had criminal acts that were clearly committed, and there were mountains of evidence that everyone agreed and saw. That's why they were not single-party impeachments. We have gone down a road that we have never entered before, and it's a dangerous one, as we've explained. This is the first time you had a single-party impeachment. Go ahead, Lee.
Let me jump in on that. If you want to talk about how cases would work, the prosecution decided that they were ready for trial. They declared that their evidence was uncontested, it was indisputable, it was overwhelming, and that they proved their case in the House beyond a doubt. They showed up on the first day of trial and spent 11 hours saying over and over and over again all the different ways that they don't yet have the ability to prove their case. That was on them to decide, to declare that their evidence was overwhelming, uncontested, indisputable, and that they had already prove their case beyond a doubt. Two, is that Adam Schiff and the House impeachment managers keep making statements of facts, not in evidence. If this was a trial, you know how many different ways the House impeachment managers would have been reprimanded so far over the course of what was over 21 hours? Or what about the evidence that they are relying on if the federal rules of evidence applied? How much that they are bringing over here that wouldn't actually get admitted into a court. But the thing is, on the first day of impeachment, they show up and they outline point by point by point by point all of the ways that they said in their words that they can't prove their case. That's on them.
You keep saying trial in the House. Doesn't the Senate have the...
arguing that this evidence should just be ignored then? Do you not want the Senate to even...
I'm answering the question about if this was a real trial. And if this was a real trial, every single time that the House impeachment, I'll give you, we've heard these great examples from Michael Purport, and he keeps finishing it by saying, why didn't they tell us that? When Jason Crow stood before the Senate and said that Mark Sandy asked, why is there a hold on aid? And he didn't get an answer. Mark Sandy from OMB. Why didn't Jason Crow finish that statement by saying he did get an answer, and the answer that OMB's Mark Sandy received was that the president was concerned about other countries paying their fair share.
Only after the whistleblower report.
Listen, I appreciate it. Adam Schiff has you here by proxy, NBC.
Nope.
That's fantastic.
That is a fact that only happened after the whistleblower report.
But listen, NBC, if you just go back to what Jason Crow said, he made a statement on the Senate floor. He chose to say that when he asked why there was a hold on aid, that he never received an answer. That's factually untrue. Now, if we want to just change, questions and diversions because, you want to hold the water of Adam Schiff and the House impeachment managers, I appreciate that. But to answer the question,
sir, that you're omitting.
Congressman, why do you keep quoting the quote-unquote trial in the House? Why do you keep referring to that when the Constitution should have been an investigation?
Okay,
that's the Senate. Excuse me, let me finish my question. That's the Senate with the power to try and impeach. It's a sole power. Why do you keep referring to a House trial.
Why, isn't it strange if that's the case, why aren't the House impeachment managers asking to call why aren't they asking to call Bill Taylor? Why aren't they asking to call Gordon Sondland? Why aren't they, no, I'm sorry. To the point that was just asking the question just before you, and let me answer. You're saying that this is the trial. Let me answer it. If you're saying that what's happening upstairs is the Senate trial, and what happened in the House was something else, why? Let me answer it, please. I appreciate it. You asked your question, I'm going to give the answer. Now, in Adam Schiff's words, he said that his closed-door depositions were, quote, analogous to a grand jury investigation. He said the closed-door depositions, that was the phase that was, quote, analogous to a grand jury testimony. Now, in that grand jury testimony, he was, imagine this for a grand jury in the United States if we want to draw equivalencies. He was the prosecutor, the judge, the jury, and the witness coach. You know how he ruled in anyone's objection with regards to absolutely anything during closed-door depositions? 100% of the time he ruled in his own favor. Now, going back to the original part as far as the Senate piece being a trial, how telling is it to you if that was the case? And if this is the trial where it's supposed to be just like any other trial, that any witness that was called on the House side that they don't want to hear their testimony. If to your point, if that's what's going on right now, isn't it amazing that they're saying then that they don't want to hear from Gordon Sondland or Bill Taylor or Fiona Hill or Lieutenant Colonel Vindman? I'll tell you what, it'd be great if we could just hear from, Kurt Volker and Tim Morrison. But guess what? We did already during open Intelligence Committee hearings, which, by the way, they don't want to call these people. You know who wasn't present during all that testimony and all of the questions? Any of the President's counsel was not even allowed in the room to be able to cross-examine any of those witnesses at all. They were banned. So, and if you want to carry it even further, putting that aside, again, as I pointed out already, there is a lot that wouldn't be admissible if the federal rules of evidence applied. It wouldn't be admissible if you can't make statements of facts that are not in evidence, so on and so forth.
Do you think that Bolton is
Congressman, I've got a question for you.
Do you think John Bolton is credible?
With regard to an anonymous sources in, via the New York Times.
So you think that is wrong, or because of that?
Look, let me follow up on the question here before we get to the question of witnesses about what happened. You keep asking, isn't the trial supposed to occur in the Senate? Yes, it is, and the trial is supposed to occur on the House's record. And the House said very clearly, according to the precedent of the United States, that every time we have, are you going to ask questions or are you going to answer questions? So in the House, what we heard was, this is overwhelming, it's indisputable, and we can't wait one more day. You don't need to hear from a single witness because this is impeachable. You have everything you need. We stood on the floor and said, if we have everything we need to impeach a president, why down the hall 100 yards are the United States senators already saying, we'll need more witnesses and evidence in that trial? Now you're all in here saying, let's talk about a witness related to an unpublished manuscript. You haven't asked me any questions about an actual transcript. There's a 179-page transcript of an actual witness named Michael Atkinson, who's the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community of the United States. He's the only witness in this whose testimony hasn't been turned over. His is testimony that we should have heard by now. You're cherry-picking witnesses. I want to hear from all of the witnesses. I wanted to do that over in the House. We wanted a complete process. Adam Schiff decided what witnesses we would hear from, what witnesses we wouldn't hear from. And the minute it became clear that he had met with the whistleblower after he publicly said that he didn't, he immediately changed his tune and said, the whistleblower's testimony is no longer necessary. He ruled that he was not a fact witness, that his staff was not a fact witness, that the whistleblower was not a fact witness. He has cherry-picked this all the way. He had the opportunity to do a fulsome investigation in the House, and he blew it. He dumped this garbage on the Senate's doorstep and is asking them to do the job we should have done in the House, we could have done in the House, we didn't do in the House, because the most conflicted member of the House of Representatives, the only one out of 435 that is a fact witness, that the Inspector General says in his transcript is a fact witness, is the one leading this investigation, the person that got to make every single decision. That's why we are watching the thinnest, weakest impeachment in U.S. history unraveling and getting thinner and weaker every time we hear from witnesses and the testimony that's being played. Thanks.
So that's why you want to hear from Bolton. You want to hear from Bolton. Will you hear from Bolton? Why won't you hear from Bolton?